boy is dangerous.
Bad feeling about this.
You don't seem to understand something.
The thing that I like most about being a dad is that I see that I'm about to impact the world.
Let's get it. It's your boy Humble Dad back with another edition of Humble Dad Podcast. Got a great show for you this evening. Why? How do I know? Because I said so. And it's got an intellectual cast this evening, just like most evenings, right? And then we're going to be talking about submissive bosses. And the reason why I talked about this, we're going to talk about this title, is because there are women that say that they are bosses, but they subscribe to individuals such as Cardi B and Beyonce. And those two women are submissive to their husbands, even though they consider themselves bosses. All right. So we're going to talk about submissiveness and being a boss and what all that entails. And the question that we're starting with this evening is, what was your favorite subject in school? And we're going to start with the most giddiest of us all. And that is Tamia. What up?
Hey.
What's going on?
Okay, so my favorite subject in school was English. Why? Because I felt like it was the subject that allowed me to be most expressive, creative writing, my thoughts or opinions. I was able to yap. So I loved English. That was my fave.
That's what's up. Hey, and welcome back. The person that had the chat popping with all his intellectual dialogue. We're going to welcome to the stage, Lost in Translation. How's it going, sir?
It is going well, Humble Dad. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, man. I'm working on my voice inflections, such as yourself.
Thank you.
Absolutely. What you got on it?
My favorite subject was AP Physics. I love physics. And not for the reasons y'all think, though.
Okay.
What I used physics for was to figure out greyhound racing. I used to calculate foot-pound per square inch to determine who the winners were going to be in dog racing. So, yeah.
Huh. That's
so
what's up.
I put that math to work for nefarious reasons, but it was fruitful, to say the least.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Hey, we're going to welcome to the stage. She said, I got my hair did. And we're going to welcome Miss Ash to the stage.
Hello. Hi,
What's going
everyone. My favorite subject was actually math. Now that, I don't know why, I just think that math is really not looked at in the Black community, because I have to tell my oldest, like, look, if you want to go anywhere in life, baby, you got to learn math first. Just because you can read and understand, but you got to be able to calculate when somebody telling you your figures is supposed to be $6,000 on your check versus when they cut you $2,500. We need to know where that other percentage went. So math was always my thing.
That's what's up. Hey, and we're going to welcome to the stage the well-dressed, best-dressed of us all, Sir Hale Speaks.
Salute to you, HD.
Absolutely.
I'm chat.
What you got?
My favorite subject, I would say, was English as well. I always knew that I would be a speaker of some sort. And so I delved into English and wrote and studied. That was my favorite subject.
What do you remember one of your favorite writings?
Yes. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second, y'all. My cat is about to pull my. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry, guys. My cat is about to pull my camera. 1 second.
No worries. Hey, we gonna welcome to the stage, Mr. Brandon. What's up, homie?
Hey, what's going on with you, HD?
I'm
Appreciate
good,
you
bro.
having me on again.
Glad
Yeah,
you
man.
came back.
Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. Now, I'm still reeling from Lost in Translation talking about some AP physics.
I know,
Like,
right?
not just regular physics. He said AP. He said AP physics. That's harder than college physics. But okay. Yeah. So for me, I say my favorite subject was also an AP class, was AP World History. Reason I like, or the reason I like that class was because that was the class where we learned about the world. And I remember one of the assignments we had to do, we had to memorize every country in the world, had to be able to name it on the text. And that was the first time I really learned about different cultures and places, not different cultures, but mostly different countries, what they look like, and kind of put that in my head. Like I want to go visit some of these places, and I think that kind of ignited like that fire to kind of travel, to get out of where I'm from and see different stuff. So that's why.
What was the first place that you visited that you like you had to memorize in world history? Did you visit any of them places?
Yeah, but I want to say the first time my first travel outside the country was like a cruise. I went to like the Caribbean, but I say my first for real, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm somewhere like not many people that look like me be at. It's when I went to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I was like, yeah, I'm out here.
That's what's up.
The hookah in the Arabian desert. That sounds like a flex. Just saying it. Just saying that sounds like a flex.
Yeah, I lived in India for like 6 months.
Yeah, ooh, that's what's up.
Yeah. Hey. So hell, okay. And listen, welcome to the stage, my homie, my friend, my accountability partner. He was telling me off this just this afternoon about myself, Mr. Dwayne Jones in the building.
Yo. Hey, sometimes we got to be told about ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, that's why I don't really like you. But I know I need you in my life, though.
It's all right. All good. Favorite subject I would have to say was athletics. I know they ain't the subject. You're going to say something like that, but yeah, no, I'd say that. Other than that, it was math until I had to solve for X, and then I gave it up.
Bruh, that's crazy. So, you know what's crazy? Like, solving for X, all they did was put a letter where the blank used to be. And
My
these
brain
things
still hurt.
tripping.
My brain still hurts.
They be tripping because I taught math, and I basically still do for like 20 years. And that's always been the thing that X is a problem.
It's the letters. The letters and the numbers just don't go together.
But when I put a blank, they were like, "Oh, this is what I wrote."
That's me. I'm the one.
So you get the blank, but you don't get the okay.
I don't get the letters. It doesn't blend for me.
No worries. Believe it or not, I would say my favorite subject that in high school that I remember the most and had the most fun in was probably history class. Math was not my thing until I had to learn it in college in order for me to graduate. And then that's when I figured it out. But in history class, I remember Miss King, we walked in the classroom and she said, I want y'all to know all of y'all are ignorant. I said, what? We seniors. She said, all y'all ignorant. I said, of course, we couldn't say anything much or say much. And she said, well, ignorance just means that you don't know. And so what I'm going to do is help you understand history and government. And I remember that to this day. She educated us well. And then she also took us to be in the courtroom in Dallas. And so that was a great experience for me. And I still remember that to this day. So shout out to Miss King. So today we're going to be talking about submissive bosses, right? And so the first question we're going to talk about is, what is submissiveness? What is the purpose? That's where we're going to go. What is the purpose of submissiveness? What is the purpose of submissiveness? And we're going to start with, give you some think time. We're going to start with Ash.
I mean, the purpose would be, I don't know, this word gonna be off. I would say like a smooth transition or having things to work. I'm gonna go with the example of gears, like when gears turn in the watch to make things move. I'm gonna go that way with it. Because to me, when I think submission is like where you can relax and allow somebody else take charge and rely on their leadership. And I'm going to kick it off to Brandon.
My fault.
I
think submission is I guess I would say it is necessary in order to move as one, to move as a team. It has to be somebody who's calling the play. And I think in order for that to happen, whoever else is part of the team, they have to kind of acquiesce, kind of like, okay, we are agreeing to follow this plan, and then we move in unison in order to get it done. And then submission, of course, can go. Anybody can technically submit, but I think that submission is a team decision. It's like something you do for the team, whatever your team is.
Okay.
And I say, and next I'll go Sir Hill.
Thanks, Brandon. So yeah, submission is about cohesion. If I went and I watched this movie over the weekend, you guys may have seen it already. It's The Sound of Freedom. And there was a particular scene where, and I won't tell the movie, where they were going to go rescue somebody. And it was a sort of tactical mission because they didn't have the backing of other support. So it was very important to make sure that as they went into this territory where they wouldn't have as much support, and for them to be successful, that somebody had to be the leader. So somebody had to know the plan, have the idea of what to happen, what was supposed to happen, and then everybody else supported that. That's what submission is. Like in life and in purpose, you are pursuing something. And when you have a wife that is submissive, she's literally coming up under that plan that you have and helping to make sure that there's some cohesion so that the mission is successful. So that is the purpose, at least from my perspective, of what submissiveness is for. And I'll go with Tamia.
So I feel like the purpose of submission is to make room. I feel like, especially if you speak of it in a marital sense, a woman has to make room for her man to lead. And in terms to do that, she needs to submit. Like she needs to, let go of control in a sense. Even when it goes back to our conversation about like alpha males and alphas in the household. And Sir Hill was saying like the literal term of alphas is to like go look for war, look for a fight. And so I feel like if you don't have anybody submitting, particularly the woman, there's no room for cohesion. So I definitely think that the purpose of submission is so that room can be made for everybody to play their roles without tension or anybody stepping over one another's toes, which could happen when there is no submission.
Who you got next?
I'll go with Dwayne.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would agree with you, man. As for making way, yielding to make way, for allowing someone else to take the lead, or somebody else to lead. Keep it nice and simple. I lost in translation. You want?
Thank you, sir. My definition of submission is a catalyst for agreement. You know what I mean? It has to be in place for you to agree upon the final destination or the agreed upon result. So if you have two people submitting to one plan, then it just makes everybody clear on what direction we're going in. See, without agreeableness, you can't go anywhere. And what submission does, it allows us to move forward with that particular progress or that particular plan.
Okay, so we got definitions out the way. So yielding is one. There's a common goal. That's what it sounds like that we're trying to get to. And without submissiveness, we cannot get to that particular goal. All right, so that's where we're at so far. So then as we journey through trying to help men as well as women, how does a man know if she'll be submissive? How does he know? And we'll start with Lost in Translation.
The way that a man would know is if she's willing to listen. You know what I mean? Is she willing to buy into the idea that what's best for the whole entire family or the whole unit that's involved? She has to be able to feel confident in the person who's actually leading, or be confident in the plan in which that was laid out for them. So that way, one way that you can tell is if that person is actually willing to go along with the plan, or they buy into the plan itself.
Who you got next?
I'm gonna pick Sir Hill.
This is a good question. This is really, how does the man know if she'll be submissive? There's no real way to know if she will. It's only, is she submissive? You know what I mean? Like, you have to see her in real time. And the reason why this is important is because there's a whole lot of people and a lot of ladies that will tell you, oh, heck yeah, if you lead well, I'll submit. If you provide and be that man, listen, you're going to get the best, most feminine woman. No, a submissive woman is that. And so the prerequisite for that is he's got to be a leader. He has to have a plan. And you'll start to see her naturally come up under that without her having to be negotiated with to do it. So it's not really something a man can foretell. It's really something that he sees, because either she is that or she's not that. And I have Dwayne going next.
Yeah, I'd say the level of assertiveness she puts towards conflict. Me personally, so like the Bible talks about a contentious woman, right? So how much, like, as for the level of pushback or argument, like, having your own opinion is good, but then just disagreeable. Some people just continuously disagreeable. So you say it's sunny outside, they'd be like, I don't know about that, it's partly cloudy. Or I like red. Well, I don't know why you like that. So that's the level I know where, as for if things ain't going their way, conflict. So that's how I see it. Brandon, we'll go with you.
All right. Yeah. So I agree. I would, when I think of submissiveness, I put it close to agreeableness. I like the term agreeable and non-agreeable as a term to describe the submission. And I also agree to the point, like, you don't really know, especially from afar, whether or not a woman will be submissive, or not. It's only when you are in it, so to speak, that you really start to get a better idea of what what it looks like. And it is not about what they say or how they say or whatever. It really is a behavior, and it's not something that you can really, I would say, a woman can describe it. Like, a woman can't say, "Oh, I am submissive." Like, you said you are, but I don't feel it. I don't see it. You're not behaving as such, and I think that's being agreeable to a plan or action that makes sense. Like on the front end, you're not fighting me. You're not fighting me for the will. If you have any disagreements, you can speak on it, behind closed doors. You're not out here combating me out here in public. Yeah, and I would say it's definitely just a behavior that's the only way you can really tell. It's just how they act, not what they say. Next, I'll say Ash.
I don't know what you said me for, because you stole my answer. I would say it is about how the woman comes to you with your leadership and how they go with the program. Because a lot of us, we don't know how to close our mouth. We do give pushback, especially when we have been used to being in control for so long. So, like y'all was saying, yeah, it is the attitude. It's how you conduct yourself in public, especially like when the man is not around, or when the man leaves you around the friends or the family, how you act, what you say, because that's still a representation of them. Are you under the leadership? You're not going out putting your business out in a way that is negative reflect on him, and everybody siding out him about what's going on in your home. The guys pretty much cover it. Tamia, do you have anything to add? Because I don't see nothing wrong with what they said, because they said it.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with what the guys had to say. I truly believe that submission is a character trait. Like, it's really a character thing. I don't think it's just something that women turn on or off. I think that it signifies like a certain stage a woman is in her life. Or she could have just been that simply like from upbringing or seeing a woman in her life that is submissive. But I truly feel like it has to do with character. Because if you notice, women that struggle with submission, there's an ego aspect to it. I think we all have it in us, but I think that, naturally, let me pause. I feel like all women are born with the ability to be submissive. We are naturally just born a girl, you're treated with more gentleness, kindness, to be a lady, have doors open for you. So I think that it's automatically kind of put on us in a general statement. But I think that there are certain situations or experiences in life that strip a woman's sense of being submissive. So when she has to be hyper independent or things of that sort, and then they lose that kind of natural sense of it. But I definitely feel like for a woman that lose that natural sense and have to gain it back, it's a shifting character. For me myself, I'm definitely a person that doesn't like to be. Wouldn't say I'm combative. I wouldn't say I like confrontation. So I definitely always desired to be a submissive wife, but I quickly learned early in my marriage that I wasn't being submissive due to things that I had seen or things, certain traumas that have pulled me out of that natural femininity to be submissive. And then I had to have that character growth, go backstage, regroup, and then that had to become a thing for me. And I think that's what all the guys are saying, where it's not, oh yeah, she'll say it and she'll do it. It's like really a behavioral character action kind of aspect thing. So I don't think it's a turn off. Yeah, I'll be submissive for that one, but not that one. I truly think it's innate, and you just have to either tap back into it or it just remained. Luckily, if that was the environment you had.
I'm interested in what y'all have to say to Tamia's response. Do y'all have anything to say, gentlemen?
So not to Mia's response directly, but
Right.
I do agree. Well, so this is directly. There's black people being black people right now. So I do agree with the fact that I do think that women have the potential to be submissive. I do think that, but I just think that in the culture we live in, submissiveness has been associated with weakness.
Yep.
And it's really sad that it's been that way, because submission, in order for the world to exist, everything submits to something, whether we like this concept or not. And if we don't, we live in this chaotic world. Like, just think of in our ecological system, if there was no system in place, something submitting to something else which impacts it, we would be living in perpetual disaster. And it's just sad that so many women, two things have happened. Either they've gone through trauma that has been unaddressed, because y'all know how we do. We pray trauma away, and then once you pray, it's gone, and then you don't have to worry about it again until you get married and realize that it ain't dealt with. So we deal with that, or it's not modeled. And that's one thing that I see with so many women, that they didn't have anybody modeling what submission really looks like. So it's like almost like a crash course once they get into their own marriages, and they got to figure out. And now we talk about first generation wealth. Well, we got first generation submissiveness.
Yes.
We got women who are the first people to say, you know what, I don't want to go argue back and forth and be combative, and there's issue and contention in my marriage, and I got to call my girlfriends and tell them how much of a knucklehead my husband is, and I'm gonna call my grandma, and I'm gonna call my sisters and tell them that they were right, and then I'm gonna end up divorcing my husband so that I can spend Thanksgiving single with my mama and grandma and aunties who's single, who's talking about the men that no. I'm going to be first generation submissive. And I think that that's what we see today. A lot of women, there were unaddressed trauma, but the big piece is nobody modeled what submission looks like. And then teaching them that submission really is power. Like, when you can submit, like people who really know this, men are the leaders, wives are the influence. And that influence is directly related to her ability to submit. I'll say this, then I'm done. So as Christians, right, when we submit to Christ, he literally says that as seek and knock, whatever you do in my name, you'll get. That's the power of submission. When we submit and we ask, we get. When a woman submits and she asks, she gets.
Yep.
The part that I think I have a pushback on maybe is that, which is connected to kind of like the next topic, so to speak, is that we say that it's a character situation. I think that's what Tamia said, and then Sahel said something in regards to that. But my thought process is like this, I was looking at what sparked this conversation was a lady that went viral where she talked about women could be submissive to their bosses, but then they struggle with being submissive to their husbands, right? So if it's a character thing, that it would be consistent that they would not be submissive to anyone, right? But the thing of it is not necessarily a character situation. I would say that it may be an ego type of situation, right? Saying though, I'm going to submit to the person I feel is beneficial to me, or I feel that is actually above me, right? Or even to the thing of the person I trust the most, right? So I would say that even if I'm talking about men, even though we're talking about women now, submissiveness is saying that I trust this person, okay? And I'm willing to put my pride aside, and I'm willing to do what it is that you are saying. So I would say that most women have a hard time with being submissive to their husband or significant other to a particular point of that they may feel like their plan, the man's plan is bad, or they feel like they have a better plan, right? So I don't necessarily think that it's a character thing. I believe that they're well, I guess it could be they're deciding that I trust this man more than I trust this particular man.
Can I comment on that?
Absolutely.
I feel like that does speak to your character.
Okay.
Because if you're going to marry a man and then like that speaks to your character, that speaks to your judgment. That's why I definitely mentioned ego. It's definitely an ego thing. Like if you're saying like, no, I'm not going to do this, there's ego in that. And especially if it has to do with like releasing power or, letting things go that have to do with yourself to another individual, definitely you need to trust them and things like that. But if you're going to work and you're like, yeah, I'm going to solely trust the person who's putting money in my pocket, but not the man I married till death do us part, that's a character thing to me. Like that is a character kind of, not like you have a poor character, but there's something within your character that has not molded into your role as a spouse.
But why wouldn't it be poor character though?
Can I chime in as well?
I just don't want to say they're a bad person, but I
why
feel
not?
In that area, they're not.
I'll say it for you. They're a bad person. Because if you can submit to somebody at work, why you can't submit to your husband? Your husband is who you lay down with.
Here.
I'm just saying the man that you laying next to have more power to make sure that you not walk out the door. So your boss can make sure, hey, that day you come in, get his coffee or whatever after your little meeting or whatever, that could be your final day. Then you got to go home and explain to the man that you wasn't willing to submit to, that you done lost your income. So I can't think it's kind of crazy.
You know why I didn't call it a
scary.
bad person? You know why I'm not saying it's a bad person? Because we definitely did address the lack of example. So I feel like this person could literally be taught or raised to think like work is work, and this is how like some people don't function off like their love space or their home space. Like they're completely disconnected from the home. So it's just like, okay, yeah, I know how to function at my job. Yeah, I know how to function like driving to the bank or how to handle my business, but I definitely don't know how to function in a house. That doesn't make a person a bad person. Yes, they're making decisions, but that could have been like, I'm not making excuses, but that truly could have been like, I never saw a woman submit in a household, but I definitely saw my mom work her butt off. So I know how to do that. But I need some training in that area or some reshaping in like how I'm supposed to look in this house. So that's why I'm like, may not be a bad person, may have just be what this person is trained up to do and needs to unlearn that.
I'm gonna come to you, Sir Hale. Let me ask Tamia this question because me and her work together. And so I'm thinking of a young lady that we had to have a conversation with, right? Because she was not willing to be submissive to somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Would you say that she was a good person? Because she was not willing, like I had to intervene in order for her to even think about changing her mind about being submissive.
I would say that she's a person that needs growth.
Okay.
I'm not even being sarcastic. She needs growth.
Go ahead, Sahel.
Exposure to the right people.
Yeah, so To me, you're a really good person. Bad person. You explained the bad person. So it's okay, and it's okay. It's equivalent to a student who you see as brilliant and smart, but they don't come to class and they never turn in homework. They're a bad student with potential. So I think what you're speaking to is potential, and it's okay that people have potential, and sometimes their decisions make them bad. Doesn't mean that they have to stay that way though. So I want to make that point. But to Humble Dad's point, there is both character. So when we oftentimes this argument, like women can go to work and submit to their bosses, that's the character where you put on a uniform and take on a different persona. That's not the same kind of character as, you know, that relates to your morals and ethics and mindset. So I'll give you guys an example. I've gone to certain stores, and you know, when I'm in there, they're real sweet and bubbly. You know, sir, how can I help you? What do you need? How can I help you? I'm here. Whatever you need. Let them be on a smoke break. It's a whole different person you get. And I think that that's because when you put on that uniform or you clock in, your mindset switches that you got to get in character to make this money. And as soon as they done making that money, and you know what I mean, they off work, look at people how they are when they clock out. So I think that character, it's not the same kind of character in terms of how a woman submits at the job. She's in uniform, she's in costume. That's one kind of character. It's a different kind of character when a woman submits, because submission means there are no costumes. And so you got a chance to see who I truly am. So I think they're both character, but they're two different aspects of it.
Yes, sir. Lost in translation, you had something to add?
Yeah, I had something I wanted to add. I think the reason why submission is one of those things that we can't wrap our mind around is because it speaks to our basic level of security. And I'll give you an example. Our basic level of security is survival. You know what I mean? And if we can supply a certain amount of security through faith, through works, through actions, then it allows us to move in a submissive way. I'll give you an example. I had a friend of mine who quit her job, and she discussed it with her husband, and she was like, hey, I don't want to work here no more. He said, quit. I got this. And she quit. You see what I'm saying? And it speaks to the exact opposite of what we were just talking about earlier, where, you know, she didn't, you know, she still did her job or whatever, but for some strange reason, she just didn't want to work anymore. So she had more faith in her husband, who has demonstrated over time that he has it. So she had the ability to exercise faith over her husband because he's demonstrated that he's been able to wake up day in and day out and still perform. So in this particular case, she has more faith in her husband, which actually satiates her ability or her need for security. If we're able to take care of that security need, that basic need to be secure, then submission becomes so much more easier and so much more available to a person to exercise that particular faith over time. Because it's just like any other faith. It's just like when you go to the gym, when you do that first push-up, it's hard. But after you keep doing it over and over and over again, what you do is you keep building that faith muscle. That's all submission is. The ability to be able to extend and that ability to be able to exercise that faith muscle to overcome the fear and the security that you crave as a person.
I will also, I like what you said there, lost in translation. I also say, like, especially for women, predictability is it's low key highly desired in women. And going to the job, showing up at 8, leaving at 5, like, these are the objectives of your position, and you'll get paid every 2 weeks. That's predictable. I can count on that. That's not gonna let me down unless like something getting caught on fire. So I can understand how that can be much more easier to wrap your head around, to like, okay, I can give my all to this because I know what I'm gonna put in. I know I'm gonna get out. Versus, you know, the unpredictability of a relationship, quote unquote. So, and I can understand with the fear that comes with that, and seeing, I mean, perhaps the examples growing up of like men not behaving well. Let's go with that, and then it just shakes up that confidence. And when they are presented with a man, even if it's a great man, I can understand if you're looking at, they'll look at him kind of a little skeptical, like, are you hiding something? So I can kind of see where they're coming from you know, from that fear perspective. But I do think that the reason why a woman don't have an issue submitting to the job as opposed to the men is they don't necessarily fear the job as much as they fear getting hurt from a man.
So okay, because you're saying that it's an emotional tie to the man versus it's an
every time
economic tie, so to speak. It's not as the same.
I mean, yeah, the people who are closest to you can hurt you the worst. And I imagine every time they see a guy that they're not just looking at you as a man, they're looking at every man they ever came across through their life. And if they have more bad than good, you got a big hurdle to jump over, no matter how great you are.
What's your thoughts, Dwayne?
Man, I was just thinking sometimes the same situation. They could quit and fire at the same time as a husband. They could fire you in the form of a divorce. I'm about, right? And then quit. That's the same way. But I think as for challenge, I think if they face challenge at work too, like the boss challenges them, they'll approach that differently as well. They'll start to treat their character will then start to show. I think it's a character thing as well. In that sense, once they start to get pushed, and let's say the boss says, "Hey, you know what? I noticed this. There's some training I would like for you to take." I think they'll start to see if that same character is what she shows at home. Whenever you say the same thing, as for you start to point out blind spots. It's a character thing. How receptive are they to that? So as for the boss is the one who typically, like y'all said, hey, you clock in, you clock out. You could quit, you could get a break from it. But then as for at the home, like that's where you come home and you're supposed to have that safe space. But you go home and that person's challenging you there too. Hey, I think that's where for me it becomes like it's a character thing, because as for submit, if you're willing to submit to the boss at the job because he's paying you, well, you should be able to submit to your man at home who's providing you that safety and security in a different sense.
Now we'll say we do live in different times. So I want to put this out here. So we're talking like rational adults. Rational adults. In the market today, people will quit because nobody spoke to them. So I think the other element to this is submission requires a level of maturity too, right? Where you see the bigger picture and it's not all about how you feel at that moment. So I want to insert that part of what you got to be mature, particularly in this culture where people are quick to leave jobs. We'll pray to God for one and being quitted as soon as they feel them to get hurt as well.
And Sir Hill, I'll say that's the same thing with marriage. I'm seeing that where as for the main priority is happiness, which happiness is relative and it's shifty. So in the moment they're not happy with the relationship, they're quick to dip out. So I think that's where in our times now, relationships are so strained because people are selfish. I look at it like that. They're selfish. They're not willing to do what's hard and do what's difficult. And just like what you were saying, lost in translation, that push up, right? Like that's where you get in that conflict, and people think that conflict is a bad thing. No, conflict can be used constructively. So the moment they get pushed to a certain point, and especially now in marriage, they're like, hey, like what I was saying earlier, they get with their friends, they get around all these miserable people, and they're like, I don't want to do this no more. And then they mess up a good thing because same thing with the job. They mess up a good job because guess what? They were challenged and they end up dipping out. They end up quitting. So I think in our society now, it's very easy to quit or to give up. So I'd agree with you.
Yeah, definitely that PPP loan definitely help people be a little bit more.
I agree with Dwayne on that though, because you do see a lot of people quitting and staying single instead of trying to work through the marriage over a small problem. Like today's society, it's like in my eye, this is just from my standpoint, is everybody want the party. Everybody want the gathering, the celebration, the gifts. But when the lights is over, when the party is over, nobody want to go and do that hard work. Get to sit down with that actual person that you're married to. Now that the glitz and glam is gone, it's like everybody is like they want that steel polish. No, everybody know when you get jewelry after a certain time, you still got to go polish it. You still got to clean it. But nobody doing that work no more, because really all the examples of that is really gone, because you got all these people like the topic tonight is bosses submitting. You got all these boss women and her husband are like falling back in the background, but you don't see them very much. They just make appearance, and that's not real life. It's like we got the idea of real life messed up with reality TV, when that's really not, nobody's actually reality. Like, you don't live like that. That's just for your entertainment. And we done took entertainment into our homes as if that's how the home is ran, but it's really not. It's like it's no more actual examples of husband, wife, the conflict, how they resolve it, still go to bed, say I love you, and keep it moving.
Yeah,
I have a
go
question.
ahead.
Sorry.
Wayne did to me.
Go ahead, Tamia.
I was gonna say I'm actually happy that Ash like spoke about that, because it's been actually a constant conversation even in Bible study last week that I had, where it's like women are focused on the wedding day. Like this day and age, my age group, what's glamorized is like literally just the wedding day. Like that's all you see. Everybody wants to get the dress, even like recording and creating an income on social media in reference to like leading up to the wedding day. Nobody is talking about counseling for marriage. Nobody's talking about like how to mentally prepare yourself. So that's why I was saying it's definitely like a maturity thing in that reference, because they don't think past the glitz and the glam. Or even Lost in Translation, we were speaking to one another last night on Sir Hale's podcast, where this idea of singleness is just like a safe space because you don't want to compromise. Or like we literally went through a list of why people are single, and all it sounded like was selfishness. I don't want to compromise. I don't want to share my time. I don't want to stop talking about or doing whatever I want to do. And it's glamorized. It's glamorized right now. If you don't like that, if that doesn't make you feel good, leave. If the job doesn't make work for you, quit. If he doesn't cook the way you want him to cook because the girl on TikTok, her husband cooks a 5-star meal, he's not meeting your standards. Like that's literally how it functions, is like based off of what you are seeing people choose to put out. And then you're bringing that home, like Ash said, and you're not thinking about what's not shiny about a marriage. And then that's where people are resorting to loneliness, or I'm sorry, not loneliness, but being single. And I say loneliness for the individuals, like we said last night, Lost in Translation.
You meant lonely.
Loneliness for the individuals who are like, I'm single because I don't want to deal with anything, but then are still complaining that they're single. That's when you're choosing to be lonely. But if we spoke about the individuals, if you're choosing to be single right now because you know you have things to work on for yourself and you want to be your best self before you step into a relationship, that's different. So I don't want anybody coming for me. But I meant the people that are single because they don't want to shift or mature. And that's loneliness. That's selfishness and loneliness.
That's what's up. Go ahead, Dwayne. Then we'll come to you. Sir, did you want to say something after that? All right, good. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah. So I'm glad we got on the topic of work and home, because who heard of silent quitting before 2020 or before COVID?
Silent quitting?
Before COVID.
Yeah.
All right. So silent quitting is like basically you still working, but you ain't working. Like you mentally clocked out. Like you giving them the bare minimum. And I think that's what that just does not happen just at work. It also happens in relationships as well, where you silent quitting, like you silent quitting the marriage, and then it'll eventually get to quitting. But it's like the first stage, the beta of the quitting. So I was just thinking that as y'all were saying that, because yeah, like a lot of people, like once stuff don't start going their way, they start quitting. But then I then think from the biblical perspective, at work you're not supposed to work as if you're working for a man. You're working as if you're working for God. And the same thing as marriage. You're not in that marriage just because of that man. You're in that marriage because of the institution of marriage in which God has established and ordained. Therefore, it's like that selfishness gotta go out the door. Whenever you think you ain't being treated right, get that out the door, because it ain't about you. Ultimately, it ain't even about you. So it goes back to the work life, and it goes back to your personal life with your husband or your spouse.
Yeah, that's that ego thing we talked about. You know what I'm saying? It's a struggle for anybody, I would say, to be submissive if it's not a mature, because it's a maturity, right? It's saying that I've done the proper investigation, so to speak, or vetting to say this is a person I trust, even as it relates to the scripture. When men decide to give their life to Christ, right? You're saying that I'm laying down my life, and I'm saying I'm taking up his. I'm taking up my cross too, and things of that nature. And so I'm saying that God is over me, and so I'm willing to do what he says that I should do, even against what I believe should be done. His plan is better than mine. I mean, that's hard to fathom because we live from a fleshly standpoint, right? So I want women to understand from that. I'm saying that I know that it's hard, but I also know and recognize as being a follower of Christ that when I put my trust in Him, that life becomes a little bit easier for me. I can manage those challenging moments a lot easier. And so I wanted to ask this particular question because I think somebody already said it, that people kind of misunderstand submissiveness to mean that just because you're agreeable doesn't mean you're a yes person. What do you think about that? Is submissiveness being a yes person? Is submissiveness being a yes person? So whatever your answer is, I want you to state it and then elaborate. Sir Hale, I know you had something to say, so you can start on it.
So the answer to this is a resounding, unequivocal no. Is submissiveness being a yes person? Absolutely not. So submissiveness is strength under control. It's equivalent. If you look at the word humility and submissiveness, they are somehow connected in some way. And so submissiveness is power under control. So let's take the example of Jesus Christ, who pretty much gave up his royalty to come down to earth and to wrap himself in a panoply of flesh to submit to the will of his Father for all of humanity. He submitted to God's will. I mean, he saw it through. He saw them. He had a mission, and he fulfilled the mission. After the mission was fulfilled, one of the redeeming elements of this whole story is after he is crucified, after he is whipped and he is beaten and he's mocked and he is disrespected, and he dies and he's in a tomb, and people who don't like him are celebrating him. He gets up with all power. So say that to say submission, for people who understand what it is, it's really power under control. And you can't be a yes person and be submissive, because there's an element of you've got to be tactical to be submissive, because you're not submitting just to be up under somebody. You're under somebody because you're fulfilling a mission, and you just happen to be undercover doing it. So again, to answer the question, is submissiveness being a yes person? The answer is no.
That's good stuff. Who got next?
I'll go. I feel like, submissiveness is completely respectable. It's not being a yes person at all. I don't think that it's being a yes person at all. And honestly, after what Sir Hale just said, I think that was a wonderfully put depiction of it, because to be submissive, you literally have to say no to yourself. Like it's not a yes situation. You have to literally have the strength to sit there and be like, what I have to say does not always go. And that takes a lot of strength. As a person living in your flesh, we would much prefer the easier route, which are the things that we initially think are right. So it's hard to be in an argument, especially as a woman, where naturally our feelings, everything is feelings, feelings, feelings. A woman who's submissive is very strong, and I don't even know how I want to put it. She has things under control. If she's submissive, she has things under control, because that means that she understands that how to separate and sector things so that things can flow as they should. She understands how to acknowledge her emotions and say, okay, I can set this aside, and that takes strength. That takes a lot of strength, especially even for the male perspective. What I know a man to really truly submit to is God, is giving himself to God, and that alone is not easy. Every day in this world, you are walking outside in a sense to control or lead. So essentially it's like, I need to lead, but I also need to not be like my own leader. So I think that it's a real depiction of strength, and being solid in your mind. And it takes knowing what you're doing. Like, no, it's not a yes person at all. And I think that that's where it gets hard, because in Bible study as well with my ladies, it was a conversation of, when you're submissive, you're looked at as weak. Like, oh, this girl has this, she has him running her all over the place, or she doesn't get to go outside, or she doesn't get to, we want to go on a girls trip, but she has to ask her husband why. It's like, because there are things to be considered. And because it's not just a matter of, yeah, this is my world, and I married him for the ring and to say I'm a wife, but that's not it at all, and that takes control, especially when we're tempted every day to run on our own timing or with our flesh. So I think it is a wonderful depiction of self-control and mannerism and like discipline as well. So yeah.
Anybody else want to chime in on this?
I'm just gonna
What you say, Brandon?
Say I'm just gonna jump on the train and say I agree. To say that submissiveness is ultimately trust, like unequivocally. And in order to be able to trust somebody like that, it requires a great amount of mental and personal fortitude. Like, because everybody ain't built to just trust somebody all the way and just know they got their back. I would kind of equate it because I'm thinking a lot of times of like movies and media and stuff like that. I'm an anime head, like anime and stuff like that. A lot of times like the hero will spare the villain at the end, and then the villain be calling him weak, and they say what is it? Mercy is for the weak. I was like, no, I think mercy is for the strong. What I'm saying? Weak people got to get their people out of here immediately. But if you're strong, like it don't matter if you're still alive. Like what you gonna do? Like I'm strong enough to believe in my ability to overcome whatever it is that you're going to throw at me. So I kind of equate. I know when I think of that, submissiveness requiring strength and not weakness, I think mercy is for the strong, not the weak.
It don't go down.
You just chime in, lost in translation. You don't have to wait. It's on you, bro.
I think that submission in itself.
Hold on real quick. Somebody is there's some sound in the background. If you can go on mute, everybody, and then lost in translation, it'll be on you.
Okay. Submission in itself, done properly, unlocks the genius in each one of us. And I'll explain to you how that works. When you're in a relationship, okay, with your wife or your husband, it is very common for us to be a selfish person. And when you come under submission with this other person, you're asking that person, you're telling them, look, I am a selfish person, but I'm giving you permission to point out my blind spots, and vice versa. Okay. It's the same way as if you're taking tutelage from a piano master. I'll give you an example. When I first learned how to play the piano at about 5, maybe 6 years old, I had a black German piano teacher, Mr. McDonald. I'll never forget him. He was my favorite piano teacher. And every day he would make me play scales every single day. I'm like, why am I playing scales? I want to play music. You know what I'm saying? So what happened was he didn't want to tell me why he was doing it. He wanted me to be familiar with the keyboard. He wanted me to build up dexterity with my fingers. You see what I'm saying? Because I had small hands, I'm a little kid. You know what I mean? So after about a year playing those scales, he put up a sheet of music. I'll never forget, it was the first piece of classical music I've learned to play. And it was Moonlight Sonata in D by Beethoven. And when I tell you, after hours and hours of practice, not only was I able to read the music, I was able to memorize it because I submitted to his tutelage. You see what I'm saying? He had more wisdom than I did, but I had to trust him even though I didn't see what he was doing over time. So after that, I was able to not only play Beethoven, Mozart, Rachmaninoff. You know what I mean? It was because of the dexterity that he built. He built a groove in my head for learning and taking an instruction and submission. So submission doesn't always have to play out between a man and a woman. Sometimes it can come between a pupil and the master. You see what I'm saying? So eventually, when you understand how to become better than what you are, you do what I call learn, do, and teach. You learn as much as you can. Then after that, you do as much as you can. And to really cement that masterhood, you teach it. And that cements everything. So if you're able to learn, do, and teach, then you can actually move on to the next level, which is mastery. And in this particular situation, in a relationship, it's the same way. You're taking two imperfect people and you're saying, hey, look, if we take marriage and use it as it should be, which should be in the purpose of being a transformative marriage, where it actually makes you better as a person, and you allow me to be a better person, and we become better as a unit, and it'll allow us to be greater than a whole than we were separately. Because you'll learn to have grace when it's time to have grace. You'll also learn to give grace when it's time to give grace. You see what I'm saying? So those are the little things that you do over time that you perfect when you're with your spouse. And sometimes we don't always have all the answers. We don't always are perfect, but it is that time that you use together effectively to say, hey, look, these are the places I need help with. What is it that you need help with? And you get better over time. So submission is one of those tools that you use to become better at what you were before you got into that relationship.
Does anybody want to go after that? that was good. That was good. So that kind of leads me into the next conversation, pretty much what we're all here to talk about in more detail, and that's being a submissive boss. And so, as I stated at the beginning, a lot of women, I can say a lot, aspire to be somewhat like Beyonce. I mean, y'all buying these tickets like crazy. Maybe there's some men out there for sure buying these tickets. You know, they probably buying them and reselling them to the women that really want to go. Right. I was in a training. That's really what they talked about. And I was at school, and it was several women. Oh, you going? Oh, I don't know if I can come to work that day. You know, because they got to get ready for the Beyonce concert, right? And which is fine. You can have the people that you want to aspire to be, but keep in mind, Beyonce is submissive to her husband based on what it is that we see. She never seems to disrespect him in public. I mean, not that I see. She stayed with him even through his infidelity. I mean, I think that's big for anybody. She speaks highly of him. I mean, she's the one that got the trending "my man, my man, my man" in there, right? You know what I'm saying? The little ringtone, whatever you want to call it, because that's how she sees him. And then you look at Cardi B. You know, I was listening to Offset the other day on an interview he had. He was talking to Angela Yee, I believe, and he was like, "I'm the man in my house." You know, it's what I say that goes. And yes, I did make a mistake, and I realized that I did make a mistake. And she even stayed, even though I'm not telling you to stay. That's up to you. But I'm just saying that she could have left, possibly. She could have left if she wanted to, but she chose to stay. And and also she sees him as a great leader, even though, from my understanding, I may be wrong. I'm okay with being corrected that she makes more money than him, or at least more visible than he is, right? And it's unfortunate that some women believe that money is what determines if they're going to be submissive or if a man can be a leader. So my question is, how can a woman be a submissive boss? How can a woman be a submissive boss? And it's open for discussion. Anybody can chime in on you.
Are we asking like they are a boss at work, but they come home and they're submissive? Is that what we're saying? What is that what we're defining a submissive boss?
However you want to put it, but that's I'm giving the example of submissive boss is Cardi B, as well as Beyonce, and there are some others, but those are the two. Even Candy from on Real Housewives would consider a submissive boss. So how can you be one? We can ask the ladies.
I believe that all those women depict having boundaries, understanding boundaries. They know that they're good at what they do, because being submissive doesn't mean you don't have skill and that you don't thrive in certain areas, and that you can't, be amazing. It doesn't mean God takes all your gifts away once you submit to your husband. It means you understand your boundaries and that you're not the boss of your husband or your household. You're a boss in what you're gifted in. So for Beyonce and Cardi B, that's in artistry, performance. They are two of probably the top women in their stream of what they do and what they're gifted in. But they very much understand the boundaries and the roles of their household and as wives and mothers. And they don't use what God gifted them in and made them very profound in against their husbands to make themselves seem more sufficient or better than them. Um, and I think that's where, because you can be amazing, you can be groundbreaking like Beyonce, but still very much be under the leadership and the protection of a JC or of your husband. I think that that's a beautiful thing. I think that men also find that attractive. Like, yeah, she has a brain. She has a brain. She does very well at what she does, but she also respects me. I don't think being really good at something gives you the opportunity or the permission to go ahead and overstep your partner. So I think it's boundaries. It's boundaries and understanding where those amazing gifts play a part. So that's how I think you can be a boss and be submissive.
Okay, I'm in agreement with that. I think nowadays, people have the money more focused than the actual person and the behaviors. Because when we think boss now, we're thinking $100,000 every year, but a lot of people don't understand the work ethic that comes with it. Because in the beginning, you have to submit and to listen to somebody, because there's somebody out there, like Lost in Translation was speaking on. Somebody got to teach you something in order for you to catapult. And I think that's a big step that today's society is missing, whether you're a woman or a man. But most likely women, we are missing that step, that we need to be under somebody's leadership. But the way society has it is women be bosses and run everything. No, 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 no. Because you can take Gabrielle Union, for instance. We were just speaking on her a couple podcasts ago that she's the leader of the house. You can tell how she act, and she's always talking about, I'm concerned about bills and I'm concerned about this. I'm like, okay, where your man at? Because your man is supposed to be helping you with some of these things. It's not saying that their bills not gonna get paid, but it's not like you're the only one that's got to come up with the money strategy. It's like, we goes back to the conversation of alpha. It's not really an alpha thing, but what kind of man do you have? What kind of leadership does he have over you? Because if he's not the man that you actually need, you're just selling for him because he's what look good for the public eye, you're going to be in this constant battle. That's why men are looking at women like we're crazy, because we are crazy, because we run around here talking about I'm submissive, but yet you ain't submitting to nothing but the dollar. You can't submit just to money and think you're going to have a functional household. To me, it's just the whole definitions with these words and these new age definitions is where we get messed up at. Dwayne, stop laughing. I'm just saying,
You tell the
when we
truth.
get these definitions in our head screwed up, that's when our household is screwed up. And you can just look at it, because you got all these CEO women running around here talking about they bosses, but yet their husband done left them for somebody that works at Kmart, just because that woman took the time to actually show that man the attention, the respect that he need and desire. And the only thing that the woman has to say now, well, he left me for a younger woman, and you crying and you trying to stalk him. What you crying for? You wanted to be a boss, but you forgot that you was a wife first. That man did sign up for your attitude and your BS because you making more money than him. That man signed up for you to be his wife. And I think when we bring us being wives back into the picture, we'll have a lot better future and a lot better households running. And we gonna be lasting after the photos are over of the wedding.
Anybody?
Yeah,
Anybody else got something?
I'll continue in parent and say that, how can a woman be a submissive boss? I say by having a clear delineation between who you are at work versus who you are at home. And I was also saying, and recognizing that the skills and abilities that you have acquired through your ascension in your job doesn't necessarily translate over, for a woman into a relationship. Yeah, I would say it was inversely before. I would say it's inversely versus like a man who was way up. That what you needed in order to get there are also the things that women usually find attractive in a man. But that's not necessarily true when it's in reverse. And I think women have a hard time separating who I am and my positions and what I've accomplished at work versus like how I'm received or how I should be received or how a relationship should work. Like how you talk to your bosses and your subordinates and your coworkers is not how you interact with your man. It's absolutely not true. And I think a lot of women have a very, 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 very hard time separating those two things. I would say I'm a therapist. This is what I do by trade. I talk to a lot of different people. I have a lot of women in higher positions, and like if it's one thing I see across the board is like they have a very difficult. The higher they get in their career, the harder they seem to have when it comes to the dating aspect of it. And it's a lot of I don't have a lot of time, or they're trying to schedule their man in to their job, as you know. So it's difficult. It is difficult for them to recognize that delineation. I think it's so new, but I will hope somewhere in the future, these women, these new women will see the mistakes of the older generation and move accordingly. Unfortunately, we got a Darwin at this point. I think we got the Darwinist thing, like survival of the fittest. Like the people who gonna make it through are the ones who gonna be able to make that separation. The Beyoncés and what have you, they're the ones who gonna be able to pair up and have kids, and whoever can't ain't, unfortunately.
Or are they just gonna have a whole bunch of baby daddies out here
Damn,
and baby
right.
mamas?
That's true too.
Let's just be honest, because the world is not looking at marriage no more. The world is looking at being a single woman, being independent, being a single mom.
That's not
That's for
true.
the birds.
You mean
Oh,
the United States?
well, I mean, United States. Hey, it's
I
trickling
think the
over.
United States and probably maybe
It's
parts
trickling
of the
over.
UK, but the
I say
majority
Western.
of the Western
Okay,
society, but the
Western. There you
majority
go.
of like if you go east, and even if you look at the cultures that are from the east that come here, they build based on top of family
Marriage.
and marriage, like that. That's why you see such kingdoms that are basically intact. I mean, China. I mean, I think it was what's his name? I can't think of his name, but his dad was the one that was in charge, and then now he's in charge. So even what I'm saying, even in that regard, they kept the power in family. And then you look at she just passed, but I think is it Prince Charles? I think it's Prince
Queen
Charles.
Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth, thank you. Her family has been in power for hundreds of years, but it's a different form of power. Even what's interesting about being over there is that they don't necessarily have the power of what a president would have, but they have influence, and it stays in the family, even though they don't have the power. But because they have the ear of the people, so to speak, things are different there, right? So it matters who you marry. That's the whole reason of why Queen Elizabeth came into power, right? Because her uncle was like, "Listen, I want to marry this woman," and the family was like, "Nah, not if you want to be king. You can't marry her." You see, so it's not just the world; it's really the Western society. Dwayne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just say in the Western society, it's like down with the patriarchy, right? With the whole feminist movement, down with the patriarchy. So there, it's like men, the rule of men, like bad. Women rule, good. And it's like society doomed. That's my equation right there. It's like that. If that's how we are going to go, our society is doomed for failure. And that's why I say it would be the lie of the devil. So right now, as for the Western world, like we're not in a good state right now. And I'm encouraged by platform like these and many others, Sir Hill, your platform as well, where we're speaking on what is healthy and what's and not promoting what is unhealthy. And I think the Western world is promoting a lot of activity that is unhealthy, not just to the individual, but also to society. So as y'all were talking about these women, right? It's not necessarily they're going to have a lot of kids. What I'm seeing is they wait and then they can't have any kids. So they give up that beautiful gift in which God has given them uniquely to be able to bear children, and they forego it for a career. And then once it's too late, they're in regret. And I see a lot of those where women are like, man, I done spent all my life being that boss B, right? And then they pass that childbearing age, or they get close to the end of it, and then now they're in remorse because they let all that time go, and they let all the good men go as well, while they're out there trying to get that trophy, which you know what we say about them. But yes, that's how I look at it. Our Western world is going in the wrong direction, and it takes strong men and strong women in order to get it back on board. And I'm not talking about that feminist stuff. I'm talking about strong women that know what it means. That's for the quality or the benefits of submitting to a good man, and also from the perspective, and HD, we get into it about this. As for men has an important responsibility of having control of their selves, and not just going out there and just sleeping around just because that's in our nature, right? It's holding on to that and then waiting for that right woman, and same thing for women as well. So that's my 2 cents with inflation.
Yes, so I agree with what Dwayne said. As I think about this, if we really think about what a boss is, like take away what we've made it over the last 20 years, the truth is the submissive women who take care of stuff, they were the original bosses. You know, if you remember like the old television shows and movies, you would see men who would be away working or taking care of business, and they would always refer to their wife as the boss. Because if you think about what that does, like the boss is the person who manages stuff. They understand what needs to happen, and they coordinate stuff. I mean, to the T. So you see mothers, getting their kids up at a certain time. They know what snacks is going to be needed. They can anticipate who's going to cry. I mean, they got extra clothes in there. They get wet wipes in the purse. They got some candy if the kids going crazy. I mean, they got. I've seen some mothers go so far. They got hairbrushes, combs. They got rubber bands, barrettes. You know what I mean? They get beads. I mean, because they anticipating what might be needed. They got some extra halls for they man, some Tic Tacs, some bubble gums. You know what I'm saying? If you're from Illinois, they got some Fruities or some Chews. I mean, they anticipate stuff. And I think when you think about it from that perspective, women are natural bosses. I think what has happened, and what always seems to happen, is the culture takes what is genuinely good and then they make it toxic. You know what I'm saying? So now instead of women being bosses and managing their homes well, now you got to be a shot caller, you got to chase the bag, and you got to be domineering. And I think that's what happens so often. But if we being 100% honest, if I'm being 100% honest, I'm the shot caller. I am the bona fide certified shot caller of my home. What I say goes. My wife, all right. Yeah, I want to make this clear. Y'all hear the bass in my voice. I'm the shot caller when it comes to this. My wife takes care of this. And so it's never one of those things where there's a power struggle. There's never now, because I understand my assignment. And my assignment means that I might not be able to be as hands-on as often as she is. But that's just because of the role that I have to take as the leader following the mission. Her as being my helpmate, she understands that hers is being more hands-on, and her hands touch a little bit more than mine. And because we appreciate each other's roles, we can respect it, and there's never no button of heads. So I think if we're really answering this genuinely, women can be submissive bosses. And I would say it's impossible to be a good boss if you're not submissive, and you can't be a boss and you can't submit. It's not submission if you can't manage anything, which is what a boss does.
That was phenomenal. That was really good. Anybody else got something?
I got one for you.
Oh, let's get it.
Humble Dad, here's my entry into this conversation. I don't think we're selfish enough. And I'm explaining to what I mean by that. Back in the day, well, when people were married more, a husband would introduce people and say, hey, this is my wife. Or if the wife introduced somebody to her husband, they'll say, well, this is my husband. They were completely selfish. You know what I mean? They took on whole ownership. If that's your husband, then you would take care of everything that he needs. If that is your wife, you would take care of everything that she needs. If these are your kids, you take care of everything that they need. You see what I'm saying? My dad used to tell me all the time. He said, I take care of everything with my name on it. You better believe it. So my thing is this, it gets to a certain point where we hear these conversations about people being selfish. It's being selfish at arm's length. They want to be selfish to an extent. You know what I mean? As it pertains just to them. But if that spouse is your spouse, then you should take pride in that spouse. 100%. You see what I'm saying? Because that person represents you. You know what I mean? I remember my mom used to listen to the radio all the time. My dad used to be a radio announcer. And people would be like, oh, that's your husband on the radio? Yes, that's my husband. That's my husband. Yes. You know what I mean? She would say that with a certain glow. You know what I mean? And when my dad would talk, about my mom, he would say it with a certain glow. Yes, that is my beautiful bride. He didn't refer to his wife, he referred to as his bride. You see what I'm saying? And it is that a total possession of being selfishness, taking ownership of everything that is in your atmosphere. So if your husband needs something, you make sure that he has it. If your wife needs something or a word of encouragement or whatever it is that she needs, that is your wife. It is yours. You take ownership of that. You see what I'm saying? You make sure that she has exactly what she needs. So my thing is this, we're not being selfish enough. We're not being selfish enough in taking pride of our families, our communities, you know what I mean? What we do, how people see us, our perceptions of how people see us. We don't take ownership of that. And I think we need to get back to being 100% selfish. If it's somebody that's associated with you, if that's your friend, that is your friend. If that is your wife, that is your wife. If that is your inner circle, that is your inner circle. You take care of those people that's in your inner circle. Be selfish all the way. Don't be halfway selfish. You see what I'm saying? Don't love people at an arm's length. If those are your people, you take care of those people. So I think people are not being selfish enough. If you know what I'm saying.
That's interesting. When you said that, I thought about when Christ said, those who are called by my name, right?
That's right.
He's taking complete ownership of who's his, right?
That's right.
And so and that's really profound because you're spinning the aspect of selfishness.
Correct.
To say that this is mine, so therefore I'm going to take care of it. Correct. Not in the aspect of being selfish. This is mine. Nobody can have it aspect.
Right. That's a certain level of pride.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's associated with me, there's a certain level of pride. I want to make sure that I take care of it if it has my name on it.
Yeah, I didn't lose that in translation at all. I got that, bro.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. This has been good, man. Does anybody have something else to say? I have one last topic. I'm interested to see what y'all say. Ready? Here we go. How can women pastors be submissive? How can women pastors be submissive? Based on the information that we talked about, right? That nobody saw it coming but me. I like that. Here we go. Who gonna start it?
So I can start it off. So submissive pastors can start off being submissive by following the Bible.
We have a echo. Is it me?
Yeah, I hear one as well. So I'll say it like this. All right, I'm going to try to keep it classy. So I think what happens so often is, particularly in Christendom, like we promote people to leadership, and a lot of women feel the need to act like a man to garner influence. And this is two-part. I do believe that there are women who are called by God to fulfill a certain role. But I think what happens in church, we lose order. And so women try to essentially take on the sort of identity that a man would take to lead instead of being who they uniquely are. And it clashes with masculine men. Now, I'm not talking about just men in the church. I'm talking about masculine men. There is a big difference. And I think that if a woman is going to lead in a capacity without a healthy understanding of God's order, that God created man first to be the lead, and he created women to be a help. This is not to say that women don't have destiny or call of God on their life. It just means that if you can't follow basic biblical structure, then you have no, it is impossible to be submissive without the right understanding of God's structure for man and woman. So in more simple terms, if you don't understand that God places men to be the head, like if there's an issue with that, and your goal is to find a way that we're equal, and of course this scripture I think is in I forget what book it's in, but it's like there's neither Jew nor Greek, no male or female, and then we use that particular scripture to say, well, there's no difference. In the natural, there is some differences that we have to respect, and I think that a lot of female pastors that I see, they don't respect that divine order, and the title gives them the same authority that God gives a man. If you guys notice this, any of the fivefold ministries, whether this is apostle, prophet, pastor, teacher, evangelist, all of those things about leadership, all that can be summarized in the authority that God gave man. Right? So I think what we see is the use of a title to prove not only worthiness, but power. And I think if a woman wants to be a submissive pastor, the best way to do this is to follow the Bible and not just the title. Follow what the word says about it.
So you, Dwayne?
Yeah, I ran into this instance last week. I started this 2-year program at church for SALT, and you went through it. Well, one of the teachers of it is a woman. She's not necessarily, I don't believe, a pastor, but she's the second in command. Whenever the pastor's not there, she teaches the class, so she's a teacher. And specifically, one thing she said towards the end of the class, she said, and she was speaking directly to the men, she said, "Men, please let me know if you have any issues with me teaching. Please bring that up. I don't mind at all. Bring it up so that we are able to handle it appropriately, because I don't want to overstep my bounds. And also, I'm at I'm at the submission of my pastor." So she was then following that hierarchy and letting know she has no issues with it. So she was able to then state, which I didn't have any issues with it. I didn't have any issues with their teaching, but the fact that it was brought up, and then the fact that she then said, "I'm in full submission to my pastor," and also another thing from the pastor's perspective, the reverence in which he gave her throughout the way that he spoke about her before it even got to that juncture. I respect that as well. So I did see that, but then the fact that she was willing to submit to her pastor, submit or yield to the men that would have an issue or concern to that. So I appreciate the way that was handled. I didn't have an issue with it, but the fact that it was full disclosure and put out there for the people who did have an issue with it, for the people who that would be a stumbling block for. So I appreciate that transparency. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Anybody else want to chime in?
I like to say something. I agree, and I feel like it really does have to do, again, going back to those boundaries and understanding your role. So, for example, my church, I go to Shoreline City, and Pastor Earl, his wife, is also a pastor, but the way that she carries herself completely gives that I in no way am the leader of this. It's like the way she stands with him. It's I don't know how to explain it, but there's like a grace to her. She can give a word. She gives an amazing word. It's not every weekend. It's not very often, but she does give a word. She does go by Pastor Onika. He doesn't call her First Lady, but it's her aura. It's the way she carries herself. Kind of like the lady that Dwayne was describing, how they present themselves to the body of the church really matters. So you see the submission, you see how he calls his wife up on stage and she stands, to the side of him. She doesn't overspeak him. It doesn't seem like they're combating for attention. They're able to give a word together, and still he's exemplified as a leader. They're both the pastors of the church. They both founded the church together, but she does very well as at making it clear, and she doesn't even have to verbally say it, but just how she carries herself and how she respects him, it's wonderful to see. Another example I would say is Sarah Jake Roberts. Whenever her husband is around, I would say that he speaks. You know, it's kind of like, not they tone themselves down, but you can see like, okay, my husband's standing next to me now. I'm not the main voice that you're about to hear. You know, I'm gonna, if he speaks to me and I'm spoken to, I share what I have to share. If we've agreed on it, both of us sharing, great. And it's not in a disrespectful sense, and it's not in a sense to make her feel like she's silenced, but it's a matter of respect and how they carry themselves when standing next to their husbands, or it's simply when they're standing alone. They make it very clear that they're wives and they love their husbands, or they love to be led by their husbands, or they exemplify what it is to be a wife. And they mainly speak advice to the women. I think that matters too, where there's a pastor that's a female who also understands, I can't speak as a man. So you'll see Sarah Jake Roberts right now. She has Woman Evolve going on, or my pastor, she does something called Orchid, where they minister to women, and then when they can speak on a general concept, they do, but they maintain that respect of like, I'm not a man, and I'm not telling the men or that are in the body of the church what to do, nor my husband, who may be the pastor, or whichever the case may be. So another, knowing your place, essentially, and honoring that place. So not just knowing it as in like, I'm dumbing myself down, but like, I'm happy to be in this feminine position and thrive in that space where I am needed and not overstep. So I think that that's how a pastor can be submissive who's a female.
I second that, because you do see a lot of female pastors try to go above and beyond to reach all of the followers and talk to the men on a men level, but it's like, you can't. You not their mothers. You are the pastor. You're supposed to be teaching the word, but when they teach
Right.
the word, it's like a biased teaching. It's like you're going to go this route so you can get the attention of the men and try to bring them in, but you shouldn't do that, because again, you need to teach the whole Bible, not just the pieces that stick out, those I guess you could say the attention grabbers, or the clickbait, or the listen bait, in this perspective, in this sense, because you got a lot of people that don't understand. If you're going to teach me the Bible, this is where I come in it. If you're going to teach me the Bible, I need you to teach me how it's supposed to be done. You're going to say that the man is the household. Well, when we're in the congregation setting, treat these men as they are the head, because you're not doing it in a way that they're getting it back. They might be tuning out because they think they hear their mama speaking,
Mhm.
because sometimes we don't listen to mama all the time. We just, yeah, so she can stop and then move on to the next subject. And I think that a lot of time it's just basic upbringing, that we as women, we overstep our boundary because there's not a male around to check us and put us back where we belong. I've been accused of that a lot of times, and hey, I does it. I do. Form overstep my boundary type of person, but it's not to be disrespectful. It's just something that I've learned is part of my behavior that needs to be corrected. But as like I said, it's going back as women, you see this a lot. So you got women pastors trying to lead these men and overstep the bounds and not being able to actually connect with them. And I think once we learn how to connect, then we'll be able to preach or teach or reach better. But we're not doing that basic stuff, which is working on ourselves to, before we become these leaders. We just say, hey, God gave me this calling, I'm finna run with it. Oh, he said I'm finna be the preacher, I'm finna run with it. But we don't take that necessary steps to actually go within and fix some of those problems, because you can't talk to everybody the same way. Like we was talking about how you can't talk to the boss like you talk to your husband, because one, that's not the same thing. That's not even the same settings. This is somebody you laying down with. But going back to the church, your congregation is who coming for you, who's spreading your word, who's probably bringing you other followers for your flock. But a lot of times women get misplaced with that. They get displacement going on and they think, hey, this is law. This is how I'm going to teach it. This is how these men do it. This is how I got to do it to keep my followers in line. But really, that's not how it needs to be done. You have to really think about who you are and what you are. Not to go to feminist route, because I hate that too. It's not a feminist thing. We want to put these labels on things that don't fit. Women need to operate as women, but we want to have what the man have so bad that we create all these terminologies that really just put us in, I'm gonna say it, stupid category, because we got to work harder and go above and beyond for something that if we'll just sit down, shut up, and know our role, we could probably get at ease. Because it's not that hard to get somebody to do what you need them to do and respect your leadership if you know how to connect with that person. And I think that's where we all fail at as women. I'm not talking about men because I don't know, not my job. But women, we feel at that part of that connection. We get so caught up in, oh, it's a man's world, but let me be the woman in this man world and let me show you how I can stomp. And when we really shouldn't have to do all that. Because if you put on a pair of heels, you're going to hear you, whether you stomping or not.
That's what's up. Anybody else before we get out of here? All righty. All right, cool. So it's been a great show, man. I really appreciate y'all chopping it up with us. Those that are out there, make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel. Trying to get to 1,000 plus. You know, it's always the first goal, right? To get to 1,000, and then move on from there. I think we at 776. I think that's where we at. So if you can share it with somebody, comment, and all that jazz, and like. Obviously it connects to the algorithm, but I'm trying to make a difference on for real. All right. Shout out to those that joined us this evening. Tell us what you learned or what's your takeaway. All right. We'll start with Dwayne and we'll work our way back. And then where can they find you? 30 seconds or less.
Well, that's a great point. Great question. What did I learn? I learned that you can come up with some very creative questions. That last one threw me for a loop-de-loop. I'll tell you that one. I did not see that one coming. I got to wear pair of glasses next time. So shout out to Steve on that one. You can find me at DwayneJonesPhotography.com.
Lost in translation?
Yeah, that last one got me. But here's my thing. There's always safety in the multitude of counsel. You know what I mean? Safety in counsel keeps our ego in check. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes when we want to hear from God, sometimes we will make ourselves hear from God. But if you really hear from God, it'll scare you. You know what I mean? You'll do like a lot of people do. You'll run from that thing until you can't run no more. You know what I mean? It's that time. You know what I mean? So my thing is this: if you're gonna do something like that, make sure that you have the safety of counsel. You can find me on YouTube, Lost in Translation Podcast, and also on Instagram, Lost in Translation Podcast, _ between each word. Humble Dad, I want to thank you for allowing me to be on your panel once again, and thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you. Brandon, on you.
All right. Well, the takeaway I got from this is that apparently not submitting to your man, but submitting to your boss is a personality thing. No, it's an issue of personality. I never really thought about it like that. Still not 100% sure if I'm all the way on board with it, but I kind of see the point a little bit. With that being said, y'all can find me on YouTube at the Buffet Podcast with Brandon and Tiandra. We drop video every Wednesday, and y'all can listen to the audio on Mondays at wherever y'all listen to podcasts at. On IG.
That's a bet. Ash, on you.
My takeaway is submission is the key. Submission is the key, because if we submit, we can open a whole bunch of doors besides our own doors. You can find me at 360.diva on Instagram.
That's what's up, sir. Hail.
It has been an absolute pleasure being here at Humble Dad. Good talking with Tamia. Ash, loved her perspective. Brandon, always my brother, Lost in Translation Podcast, and Dwayne, been dope. There's got to be a return to masculinity. Everything else to me it hinges on that. I think that we've got to promote that, and that promotion of masculinity can't just come from men. It's got to come from our women as well. And we got to show that our women that we care about them, and that all that we do is really for the benefit of you and these kids. That's really what this is all about. And then in good faith, we need our women to understand that, and when we ask for your submission, or when we make it convenient for you to be submissive, it ain't that we think you're weak, it's that we think that you're amazing. And we want to build a life with the amazing woman that we believe that you are. So again, it's a call back to masculinity, and we need our women to understand that what we do is for the best of all of us. You guys can find me Sarah Speaks Podcast. But if you really want to know where I'm at, I'm going to be right up here with Humble Dad, supporting my great brother in what he does. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, homie. And to Mia, the nicest person on YouTube.
The planet. Okay, so
Thank you for your humility. Appreciate it.
so my biggest takeaway is that I can wear heels, and whether I stomp them or I walk, I'm going to be heard. So there's no point in stomping them. So in that, I feel like women, including myself, really should lean into our femininity. I feel like the more we lean into our femininity, the more we will be open to being submissive. We ask for a lot of feminine reciprocal traits, and we don't behave that way. We are being very masculine. So I vouch for the return to masculinity, and I feel like ladies this week should challenge themselves to really do something more feminine than you have before. So that was my takeaway. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at the Coach Mia, and you can find me on YouTube at Tamia Luster. And I am usually on this podcast on Mondays, and I've been popping into Sir Hill's podcast every now and then on Sundays as well. So I'll be here.
That's what's up. It's been dope. It's been real. It's been fun. Until next time, we out here. Deuces.
The boy is dangerous.
Bad feeling about this.
You don't seem to understand something.
The thing that I like most about being a dad is that I see them about to impact the world.